guys, welcome to my video. I'm Rob Hikes and this is all about the best day hikes that you can do in Yosemite National Park. So I'm going to split this video into two sections. The first section is going to be all about hikes that you can find in Yosemite Valley itself, and the second half is going to be about hikes that are outside of the valley, predominantly on the Tioga Road corridor. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. I've got loads of content all about national parks in the UK, the USA and Canada, but there is a lot of Yosemite content on here. So if you like Yosemite or you're planning on a visit there, do check out the channel. Now, most of the hikes I'm going to tell you about today all have their own vlog of me on the trail reviewing the hike with footage of the hike itself. So if you want to check those out, there will be a link down below to all of the individual videos on each specific hike. So to start off with, we're going to talk about Yosemite Valley. Now, all the hikes that I include in here are best hiked in spring, summer and fall. In the winter, because of the amount of snow that they get in the Sierras, a lot of these hikes might be inaccessible. Now, if you have been to Yosemite before, you'll know that the valley is the busiest part of the park. So this is where most visitors are going to go and they're not going to venture outside. So if you are planning on hiking on any of these hikes in Yosemite Valley, then do try to plan ahead so that you can arrive early and give yourself the biggest opportunity to get parking and to enjoy the trails without crowds. So the first hike that I'm going to talk about is probably the most famous hike in Yosemite, and that's the Mist Trail. So you have two options when hiking this. Either way, you're going to start at Happy Isles Trailhead. So you can park at Curry Village and take a short walk to the trailhead, or you can use the shuttle service, which is now back in full operation after the COVID closures. So the Mist Trail encompasses two waterfalls. The first waterfall is Vernal Falls. Now, to hike to Vernal Falls, it's a 3-mile round trip, and that's going to take you up and down across a granite sort of outcropping section from Happy Isles. You're then going to go over the Vernal Fall footbridge, where you will find a water spigot and some toilets, but bear in mind they're only open during the summer season. So if you hike in the fall or the spring or indeed the winter, then there's a very good chance that these will be out of service already. Most, I would say like a third of people go that far and then turn back. Up until that point, you'll see people with pushchairs, you'll see people in wheelchairs, and that's as far as you can realistically go with those sorts of things. The next section will take you up a series of steps, and these steps will go all alongside Vernal Fall, and you'll get all of this mist coming on you, especially when the falls are in full flow. So particularly this year, after the crazy snowpack the Sierras have got, this hike is a proper mist trail. In fact, it's more like a shower trail. If you do it late in the fall, in a normal snow year, you can find that the falls is just a trickle, and it could be that potentially there is no mist, or indeed there's no water actually flowing over. There's usually something coming over, but I have seen it very light in comparison to doing the trail in the spring or in the early summer. Now, these steps are pretty sketchy. They can be quite dangerous if they're icy. So in the winter, that section is closed and you're redirected up the John Muir Trail to get up to the top of the falls, which is slightly longer and is just a series of boring switchbacks really. But if you are determined to get up there and the gate is closed, please do respect the signs, don't climb over. There's a reason that it's closed. People have slipped on the ice in the past. It's very, very slick. So once you get to the top of Vernal Falls, you will come to this like granite patch where you can see the water flowing over. Don't go in the water like some stupid people have done in the past, because it's really dangerous. That water moves really quick, and wet granite is very, very slippy. Up there, you quite often will see chipmunks, you'll see ground squirrels, who all want to get a bit of the snacks that everybody's eating for their reward when they get to the top. Another third of people that have made it this far, so now we're on 2/3 of people, this is as far as they'll go. They'll turn back and head back to the valley. But if you want to hike on further and you really want to soak up that waterfall environment, you can hike up the additional trail to get to Nevada Falls. Now, Nevada Falls makes this whole trip a 7-mile round trip. So it's going to take you a little bit longer. You will come alongside the water, and then you'll cross over another footbridge and then hike through a very quiet part of forest. And here is a really good opportunity to see wildlife. I've seen deer there in the past. and there's a few lookout points where you can look out and look at Nevada Falls from there before you begin climbing up a series of rocky switchbacks. And it's a pretty intense section of the trail, and it does feel quite exposed, it's quite hot, but when you get to the top, you will be at the top of Nevada Falls, which will be the as far as the mist trail itself actually goes before you come into Little Yosemite Valley and then start venturing into Yosemite's wilderness and backcountry. This is probably as far as you can realistically go on a day hike anyway. You can go on to Panorama Point, which I'll cover a little bit later in this video, but ultimately that's the mist trail. So in terms of elevation gain, it's going to be 1,000 feet of elevation gain from Happy Isles to Vernal Falls, and then it's going to be another 1,900 feet of elevation gain to get from Vernal Falls to Nevada Falls. So depending on how far you go, this could take you anywhere from 2 to 5 hours for the round trip. At the top of Nevada Falls, you will find pit toilet, and there's also a really nice rocky area where a lot of people again will sit and take snacks. You can soak your feet in the river on a hot day, which is really refreshing, but be careful of the current within the water as it's quite dangerous. Also, there has been quite a few incidents with rattlesnakes up there. So just last year, someone had to be airlifted out because they had gone into the water and not noticed a rattlesnake was right on the water's edge. On a hot day, rattlesnakes really like to cool off in bodies of water, because don't forget, they can swim. So just be careful where you sit, where you put your hands, and where you put your feet, because you never know what critters might be awaiting you. So the next hike on this list is one that I've hiked quite recently, and that's Upper Yosemite Falls. So starting at the Lower Yosemite Falls trailhead, you climb pretty much straight away up past Columbia Rock, and then you get a viewpoint of the waterfall. From there, there's a series of switchbacks that take you all the way up to the rim above Yosemite Valley, and at this point you will see where the water tips over on that iconic waterfall, which is one of the largest waterfalls in North America. You'll get 2,600 feet of elevation gain, and it can take 7 to 10 hours for the round trip, depending on your ability. Now, this trail is really, really exposed, so if you are planning on hiking this trail, I really would recommend that you plan ahead, looking at the weather forecast. There's a huge section where there is no tree cover, or you're surrounded by like bushes, so you might want to be careful of incoming thunderstorms and rain. Equally, if it's a very hot day or in the summer, make sure you've got sunscreen, a hat, and plenty of water. While you do see this waterfall all the time, a lot of the little creeks and little small falls that come off the trail are only going to flow when that snow is melting. So by late summer, a lot of that will have dried up, and it could be quite a long day for you not to be able to get any fresh drinking water. There's no toilets within the trail system itself. However, at the trailhead, there is really nice bathrooms that have flush toilets. Once you get to the top, you will traverse through the backcountry of Yosemite and come out to the rim. Looking down on the valley, you can see so many good views from there, including Half Dome, and on the way up you will get to see a few sneak peeks at Half Dome as well. Once you get to the top, there is the opportunity to climb right to the brink of the Upper Yosemite Falls, which will see you climbing down a really narrow rock face with just a handrail to hold on to. It's not for the faint of heart. Some kids or people that have a fear of heights might find this just a little bit too challenging and may choose to terminate their climb up to Upper Yosemite Falls once they get to the viewpoint itself. This hike is one of the first hikes that melts out in the summer because of where it's located. So you can typically start hiking this hike in the early spring, but do bear in mind that once you get to the top, you will hit the snow, and it's very likely that you'll need spikes and poles to complete it in the early spring. Also, in a year like this year, where the snowmelt is so insane, you need to bear in mind that you might be actually just hiking a constant waterfall, which is what happened to me when I did this trail back in. So the third hike on this list is the 4-mile trail. Now, there is a catch with this one because you work very hard to get the view of Glacier Point at the end of the hike, but do bear in mind that on certain days, I think weekends only in 2023, but hopefully from next year it'll be open all year round, you can actually drive to Glacier Point, which could sway your decision as to whether you hike this. Nevertheless, it's still one of my favourite hikes, purely because you get so much bang for your buck. So starting at the 4-mile trailhead in the valley, you'll climb up a series of switchbacks through the forest. Up there, you will get exceptional views of the falls from the other side of the valley, and then you'll go towards Half Dome and you'll get exceptional views of Half Dome and Cloud Rest and North Dome from there as well. You'll then go through a forested section where there's a very high chance of seeing wildlife. I've seen black bear on this trail before. I've also seen deer on this trail as well. And ultimately, you'll come to Glacier Point, which is one of the most iconic viewpoints in all of Yosemite. It's probably one of the best photo spots as well that people can get to. But just bear in mind, once you get up there, you are going to be meeting people that have not worked as hard as you and have just driven to get that picture. So you might be filled with a little bit of envy. There's also toilets, a gift shop and water spigots up there, but all of that is seasonal. I'm not too sure of what's going to be open this year. A lot of it was closed during COVID, so some of that might still not be ready for full operation. Just the hike up the 4-mile trail and back down to the 4-mile trailhead is going to take you 6 to 8 hours depending on your ability, and there is 3,200 feet of elevation gain. You could go big on this one if you want to and make this a much bigger hike, and this is what I've done on a couple of occasions for the ultimate hike out of Yosemite Valley, where you climb up the 4-mile trail to Glacier Point. Then from there you follow the Panorama Trail down to Illilouette Falls and then onto the Mist Trail, and then join the valley back at the Happy Hours trailhead, where you could take the shuttle bus back to your car that could be in the village parking lot or at the 4-mile trailhead. This hike would become 16.8 miles, but it will give you solitude, it will give you wildlife, spectacular scenery, and it really ticks all of the boxes within Yosemite Valley, which will give you that ultimate day hike in Yosemite. So the opposite of go big is, of course, go small. And you can do that in Yosemite Valley. The Mirror Lake Trail is probably one of the shortest day hikes that families, people with kids or people with limited abilities do when they're hiking in Yosemite. Now this is just 2 miles round trip to get to the tip of the lake and back, or you can make it a 5-mile loop if you go all the way around Mirror Lake. It's pretty much flat the whole way. There's very little elevation gain at all. And you've got a very good chance of spotting some wildlife on this trail as well. I have seen quite a lot of scat from mountain lions or bobcats. I've seen a coyote on this trail before, and a lot of people do come across things like black bears and rattlesnakes on this trail as well. Bear in mind, if you're hiking in the off-season, particularly the winter, this is probably one of the only snow-free or limited snow covered trails. But you can make more of it as well. You can attach on the Valley Loop Trail, which in its entirety is 21 miles. But there's also smaller sections, for example, the middle loop, which focuses on the sort of core section in the center of the valley, is just 5 miles. So there's some great options if you want to have a hike without too much strain on your legs, knees, or if you're traveling with little ones, that's probably a good one for you. So there are 5 or 6 actually, very good hikes that you can take from Yosemite Valley, provided you've got that elusive parking spot. The next section I'm going to talk you through are hikes outside of Yosemite Valley along Tioga Road. So what is Tioga Road? Tioga Road is a continuation of the California Highway 120, which connects the Eastern Sierra and the Western Sierra, and it's a seasonal road. So because it goes over Tioga Pass, they get hella snow, and for a lot of the year it remains closed. Typically it opens in late May or early June and closes in October. Of course, that depends on snowfall. And if you look at the year 2022-2023 winter, they had exceptional record-breaking snow in the Sierras, which has meant that today is the 4th of July and it's still closed with no opening date yet determined. So these hikes, these hikes are amazing, but you need to strike while you can and get there when the going is good. So unless you're planning on visiting in July, August, September, this is one that you may need to put on your list of plan to do, but Also, if you're going to plan on doing any of these hikes later in the season when the road is open in, say, October, bear in mind that it can close overnight with very little warning. So a lot of the time they put restrictions in place that say no overnight parking. This means that you can definitely go and do the hikes in the daytime, but they don't like any vehicles being left overnight just in case there is a snowstorm or something comes through that could impact it. So quite often you'll need to bear in mind the time of year that you're planning on doing these hikes. So the first one that I'm going to talk about today is North Dome. Now, I love this hike so much. I have seen a black bear on this trail, I've seen loads of other wildlife, and it's a really, really good hike. It's a day hike, so it's 8.8 miles, so it's a fairly long hike, but there's very little elevation change. So while you do hike and gain 2,400 feet over the course of the trail, your end point is actually at a lower elevation than your start point. So it's not too challenging, and most families would be able to do this with children. So this trail starts at the Porcupine Creek trailhead on Tioga Road. It's a very small parking lot there where you could probably only get about 10 cars. So I recommend that you start the hike early in the day or late in the day. The good thing is that this hike isn't too long. It can take people about 2 to 4 hours. So you will get people coming and going throughout the day, which obviously frees up some parking spaces then as well. There is a pit toilet and bear lockers at the trailhead, so you can store any smelly food items that you might have. As I said, this is an area in black bear country, and I have seen and encountered bears on the trail here before. So the trail itself will descend through various forest sections and meadows before opening up at the Indian Rock Arch, and then climbing down the granite face of North Dome, where you'll get exceptional views of Cloud's Rest and Half Dome, and be able to look down onto Yosemite Valley as well. A great thing about this hike is it is a little bit more secluded. As with most of the hikes on Tioga Road, you'll see less people than you would if you were on one of the valley trails. So this does add to the wilderness sort of experience and give you just a little bit more solitude and a little bit more peace and quiet as well. The next hike on this list is May Lake and Mount Hoffman. So again, this is one of those hikes where you can go as far as May Lake and turn back and still have had a great hike, or you can continue on to Mount Hoffman. If you just want to go to May Lake, it's 2.5 miles from the trailhead, or it's a 6-mile round trip if you want to incorporate Mount Hoffman into this as well. You've got a few choices of where you start from. You can start from Tenaya Lake and make it a longer hike up to May Lake, or you can go to the May Lake parking lot itself. If you're just going to do May Lake, this could be as short as an hour to an hour and a half. Including Mount Hoffman, because there's a little bit more climbing involved, will make this around a 4 to 5 hour. Some of the benefits here are it's quiet, and you get a really good exposure to the Sierra Range, incorporating those iconic granite peaks and mountains with a little bit more exposure. So again, sunscreen is going to be really important. Because of May Lake, if you go early in the season, you could encounter quite a lot of bugs, so mosquitoes, etc. can be problematic on this trail. There's also fishing opportunities at May Lake as well, if that's part of your interest. So to get to May Lake, it's a 500 feet of elevation gain, or it's 2,000 feet of elevation gain if you incorporate Mount Hoffman. Next up, we have another one of my favorites. This one is Lembert Dome. So this trail is in the Tuolumne Meadows section, which is such a beautiful part of Yosemite. There is a campground here, but it has been closed for renovation in the last few years. But Tuolumne Meadows is a great area to view wildlife because you've got a big open meadow away from the valley where animals do tend to explore, especially early in the morning and late in the evening. I saw a black bear here last year. I've seen loads of coyote, I've seen deer, and it's a really, really beautiful part of the park with wildflowers, a river, etc. This part of the park is one of the further points along Tioga Road, so give yourself extra time once you enter Yosemite Yosemite National Park to actually get to the trailhead here. There's a decent parking lot which fits quite a lot of cars, and they have porta potties there as well as bear food storage lockers. The hike up to Lembert Dome itself can be done as an out and back, or you can make it a loop, as there's quite a few trail options, and it's around 2.8 miles. In terms of elevation gain, it's only 900 feet of elevation gain, which is great if you want to do a hike where you get to summit something, but you don't want to have to put too much work in. And it can take 1 to 2 hours depending on ability and how much time obviously you spend at the summit. Bear in mind that tennis shoes are probably not the best footwear for this one. You definitely want something with a bit of grip, especially if the granite is wet, as it can be quite slippy. Trail finding can also be hard on the actual dome itself, so look out for rock cairns or from other people on the trail to see which is the best way to get up there. But when you do reach the summit, you can look down on Tommy Meadows, you can see Mount Hoffman, you can also look out over to Lyle Canyon and Donahue Pass and view all those hikers on the PCT and JMT who pass through Tommy Meadows. And the last hike that I have for you on this list is probably the best hike in Yosemite, and that's the Clouds Rest hike. So you can do Clouds Rest from the valley, where you climb out and you backpack and you can night stop along the way. You could do it as a very, very long day hike, or you can do it the best and most simplistic way, which is to drive along Tioga Road and to park at the Tenaya Lake trailhead. From here, it's a 14.5 mile round trip, but there's only 1,800 feet of elevation gain. So whilst it's a long hike, there is a lot of flat sections, which makes it very doable as a day hike. It typically takes between 6 to 8 hours to complete this hike. Starting off at Tenaya Lake, you'll walk through various meadows and forest. You'll have a few switchbacks up and switchbacks down at various points, and you'll see lots of lakes and wildflowers as well. This is another great trail for wildlife because it's a little bit more remote, a little bit more quiet, so you've got a more chance of spotting some black bears. You could also see things like lizards, snakes, and other mammals along the trail as well. Bear in mind that this hike can be quite difficult for smaller children or people with disabilities. Once you get to the base of Clouds Rest, you can look back on the Sierra and you can see Tenaya Lake where you started out for the day, and you get these iconic views of those rugged peaks with the scattered trees amongst them. And then going forward, you will climb up the spine of Clouds Rest, which looks way sketchier than it actually is, but do bear in mind if there was a thunderstorm or an incoming storm, you might want to recede because it could get pretty dangerous. It's very exposed and you're at a height of around 9,000 feet. Climbing across the spine, you will come to one of the most iconic views in all of California, looking down on Yosemite Valley with a full view of Half Dome. And what I like about this is you're above Half Dome, so you're even higher looking down on it, and I think the pictures speak for itself. It's such an incredible view. It's such an iconic hike, and for me, I'd say it probably is my favourite hike. That and the Panorama 4-mile loop are the two best day hikes, I think, in Yosemite, but of course it's down to ability and what you can do yourself. So bear in mind what your limits are yourself. I hope that you found this video useful. As I said earlier in the video, there is a video on all of these hikes individually on the channel. You can check out my Yosemite playlist and of course subscribe, and then any future hikes or vlogs that I get on these trails, you'll be the first to know about it. If you have hiked any of these hikes, I'd love to hear about it. What were your thoughts? Is there anything I've missed off or anything that you would have excluded? Comment down below and please like the video, as it does help others to find it. Thank you so much for watching.
I'll never forget.